it contains certain electrolytes such as magnesium or selenium or zinc or manganese.
I think the enemy of innovation and creativity is, in fact, embarrassment.
The seeds also help with the digestion in general, which can also help with balancing out hormones and clearance of hormones.
Welcome to the Hot Flash Health Podcast, where we're dishing out unfiltered truths about menopause with a side of sass and a sprinkle of grass.
Get ready to dive into the wild world of hot flashes, mood swings, and all of the other joys of being a teenager.
This ain't your grandma's podcast. No, we are here to talk our bodies, our fears, our passions, our desires, all while navigating this wild roller coaster ride of menopause.
So grab a glass of wine,
Or free.
kick back, relax, and let's enjoy this hot flash wave together.
I'm Courtney Mamusha, and alongside me is my fabulous co-host, Dawn Fable.
We're just two outspoken broads who like to call it how it is.
Now, without further ado, let's kick off today's episode.
Good afternoon, and welcome back to the Hot Flash Health Podcast, where we laugh through the sweats, we cry through the mood swings, and we cheer for the badass women, including these women who are changing the game in hormonal health. I'm your host, Dawn Fable, and my sidekick, Courtney Mamusha. And today's guest we are so excited to have. So welcome, Terry Chang and Dr. Ulrike, the incredible co-founders of Two Moons. This is the first seed cycle capsule on the market, where it helps women everywhere find natural support for PMS, PMDD, perimenopause, hormonal acne, and beyond. What a gift to all of us. Terry is a former lawyer and executive in the entertainment industry who took the leap to pursue Two Moons full-time last October. We love the reinvention story. Ulrike is a brilliant neurologist and researcher who brings an integrative approach to patient care. Together, they have created a company that's not only helping women balance their hormones, but also empowering mothers and daughters alike, because when you're dealing with perimenopause and puberty, hormone support matters. So today, we're super excited to dive into what the heck is seed cycling and what does it look like? How these friends turned a personal passion into a product helping hundreds and thousands of women. Why moms and teenage daughters can both benefit from seed cycling, why advocating for your health, your hormones is the new power move. So ladies, grab your fan, your adaptogen tea or tequila, don't judge, and let's get into it. Welcome, ladies.
Okay, I want to really know, we were kind of going through your history a little bit, how you guys started. A doctor meets a lawyer, meets a music class. I mean, give us kind of what this started like, this rom-com of beautiness that really helped create this product, and how that friendship turned into launching this product, you guys.
Well, to start from the beginning, we have to go 17 years back. This is 2008, so it's pre-credit crisis that we met in a Juilliard masterclass for advanced amateurs in piano performance. And we were young professionals at the time. Ulrike was working in research. I was a junior associate in one of those white shoe law firms. And we were both working very long hours, but we wanted something fun where we could relax after work. And so we both enrolled in this class at Juilliard that we were in for 5 years. That's where we met. Now, then we stayed friends over the course of the next 17 years. Obviously, we're here today. But 2 years ago, I was hosting a clothing swap for our group of women friends in my apartment. And the topic turned to hormonal health and what we each have been going through. And I opened up to the group that I've dealt with PMDD for most of my adult life. And it's interesting enough that even after all these years of friendship, we didn't really talk about this a lot. So this was really sort of a breakthrough moment for us. And I mentioned that I had tried hormonal birth control. I tried antidepressants to deal with PMDD, which is basically a severe form of PMS. It comes monthly. And I asked Ulrike if there was something more natural that she knew of, as you know, she's a doctor, something more natural that would be a gentler solve for this issue. And she mentioned that she had seed cycled for years. And she's a Western trained doctor, but she's open to integrative approaches to medicine. And her father is an OBGYN in Germany. And so she knew about seed cycling, done it herself. And she recommended it to me. And I said, well, it sounds great. It's all, it's holistic, it's natural, but it's very complicated. And she'll get into how it's done later. But it basically involves mixing 4 seeds during different parts of your cycle. And I'm a real Luddite in the kitchen. So I wasn't going to be mixing these seeds. And also I was traveling 40% of the year at that time for work. So I said, couldn't we make it simpler for women? Couldn't we package it in a simpler format? And at first we thought maybe we'd make snack bars. So we'd pre-mix the seeds for 2 different parts of the cycle and produce these snack bars. And then we even tried a few recipes in the kitchen, which were a bit too sweet. But then we did some market research among our friends, our sisters friends, their sisters, a real sisterhood market research experiment. And we found out that women do not want to eat more snack bars. They were not interested in consuming more calories or sugar. And so we asked them what they preferred, how they preferred to consume it instead. And capsules ranked as number 1 above granolas, above any other sort of bite or bar. And so it was followed second by gummies, but gummies also have a lot of sugar, and you'd have to make a giant gummy, like just a preposterously large sized gummy to fit all the active ingredient in. So we thought capsules for the win. So that's basically.
I feel like every teenager girl is listening to this like, wait, where are my big gummies? Let's go back to the big gummies.
So because we were too lazy to mix seeds in the kitchen, we had to form a company.
Oh my gosh. Sometimes it's those stories that come out with the most phenomenal results, and oftentimes we find that many of the women we speak to are coming from that of a personal need. So thank you both for combining your vision and your knowledge and your passion in helping other women. Now, I am dying to know, because this seed cycling has not made it to the mainstream yet. So for both myself and our listeners who are very new to this idea, can you actually break down what seed cycling it is, and why do different seeds support your different phases of your cycle?
Absolutely. Also, first of all, thank you so much for having us. And so the seed cycling is a very interesting concept, and it essentially supports both halves of the menstrual cycle. So there are 2 different seeds that are consumed during the first half, which are flax seeds and pumpkin seeds, and then sunflower and sesame seeds during the second half. And ideally you use the freshly ground seeds, and you have them ideally in the morning, and you can have them in some kind of like a muesli or granola, in a smoothie, or you eat them raw. And the idea behind this is that it contains certain electrolytes such as magnesium or selenium or zinc or manganese, which have different properties, such as being anti-inflammatory, or they can help with pain and cramps, or they can help with headaches. And then they also contain lignans. For example, the flax seeds during the first half, they contain lignans that are very powerful in the sense of they have a little bit of a phytoestrogenic property. Moreover, the seeds also help with the digestion in general, which can also help with balancing out hormones and clearance of hormones. And essentially, there are probably some roots in Ayurvedic medicine where seeds are used a lot. And the term itself is coined not so long ago, but seeds themselves have been used for a long time. And it is very interesting. If you look at literature, the actual ingredients, zinc, magnesium, etc., they have been actually nicely described in various conditions, such as migraine or period-related migraine and headache, or, for example, cramps or other conditions, inflammation, etc. And lignans themselves, such as the ones that are contained in the flaxseed, are also nicely described that they can help with some hormonal balancing. And so this is kind of the idea behind the seed cycling. So by itself, it's a very simple concept. It's like very natural ingredients, just 2 different seeds during the first 14 days, ideally, and 2 seeds during the second 14 days. But I mean, it can be a cumbersome thing. I mean, I grew up having seeds almost every morning somehow in my oatmeal. And it was a very natural, regular thing that we just did at home. And I never thought too much about it until I really read the term seed cycling and thought a little bit more about it and actually later on implemented it fully.
And Ulrike, you have such an interesting background. You know, you come from a long family line of your father's an OBGYN in Germany, and you are a physician and obviously very passionate about this research. Can you share with us a little bit about just your background?
So it's actually very interesting. Mother's father invented several types of teas, such as for headaches, against allergies, for liver health, kidney health, etc. And it was very interesting to grow up as a child and be among all these herbs and all these beautiful things that were constantly mixed. And it was great to see how people were very happy and thankful for this. And my parents still have one tea that they still sell, they give and sell essentially to some people who are still so excited about it because they feel so well on it. And my dad is an OB, and he actually took me when I was 19 and freshly in med school, he took me to an acupuncture class as well, because he always said, like, just do a natural approach and do a natural way. And why doing it everything with a pill or hormonal booster or some artificial big thing, just try something natural first. And it's really nice to see kind of that approach from both parents. And of course, there's always a role for the classic medicine by all means. I mean, this is what I have learned a lot through both parents as well. But it's really nice to see the integrative approach. And I am here a neurologist and specifically specialist for autoimmune diseases in the brain. And we come with really big autoimmune medications and anti-inflammatory medications. So these are quite big guns, actually. But I always think it is also worthwhile talking to everybody about sleep and gut health and, just hormonal well-being, etc. And I think this is just always a nice thing to bring up to everybody. And so everybody who wants to listen to it or does not want to listen to it gets these speeches. And so Terry was one of them. And this is how this entire conversation started.
Yeah, I can imagine that, both of you, right? You have this history of your family and your upbringing and your traditions that you bring to the United States and have this knowledge and continue your path in medicine. And Terry, you're out here just being a woman like the rest of us, like, I'm fucking frustrated, like I have these symptoms, how can I, manage this? What were some of your both like, oh my God, it works moments, right? Like you're obviously like, this is going to help women all over and we want to bring this to the market. What were some of those moments for you guys that really made you want to do this and Terry, quit your job?
Well, it's interesting. So I was an entertainment lawyer before becoming a founder at Two Moons, and people often think, oh, it's so different to be a wellness entrepreneur versus an entertainment lawyer. But I have to say, because I was working in independent film, my final role is as the chief legal officer for an independent film company, also head of business affairs and business development. I have to say there's a lot of parallels between indie film and being an entrepreneur. Okay, so they both require quite a bit of scrappiness, right? You have to make do with scarce resources, but also you need to have a lot of imagination. You have to be able to rally people around a vision. You have to align all the different talents, right? In indie film, it could be cast and crew. In a startup, obviously, you've got the technical side, you have the side that's raising investment as well. And then in independent film, you have to make things cool to a small group of people before you bring it to a wide audience, right? So you have limited release and then you bring it to wide release. And then you have to think about the marketing and distribution behind that. And the same thing is true in the wellness space as well. You need to find your people first, like the true believers and the people that are very passionate and the early adopters, and they spread the word to everybody else. And then also going on podcasts like these. It wouldn't be a strange thing in the entertainment industry to go on the podcast circuit. So I think that I learned a tremendous amount from the very talented directors and producers that I had the opportunity to work with. And so nothing is lost. And in fact, I think it was a very natural segue in some ways. And also we did an accelerator program. So Ulrike and I did not just dive into this willy-nilly. We participated in an accelerator for a few months that was held at night. So we were able to work our day jobs and work on this on weekends and evenings. So it's definitely been a safari, as I tell Uli. It's been an adventure, but it's really exciting. And I feel like, having grown up in the Silicon Valley, both my parents are in tech, I was always surrounded by innovation and startups. And so it was not out of the question at any moment in time that I would eventually become a founder myself. But I did not expect this to happen in my mid-50s. We don't fit your normal kind of Silicon Valley founder profile, but that's also what makes it more fun, I think.
Well, we applaud you for doing what you're doing in so many different realms. First and foremost, that there's so much noise in the wellness industry with all the different media vehicles. And, it's very difficult to cut through a lot of that noise and make an impact and educate. And secondarily, being female founders, we recognize the challenges in the capital environment for female founders. And we're really wanting to, support those endeavors. So any way we can do that, we're certainly happy to. Now, tell us this. You have really made these products and seed cycling so much more accessible in the form of the capsules. You've come up with such a fantastic name for these capsules, the Zest and Zen capsules. Can you tell us about these capsules, sort of your daily ritual of these capsules, how they work, and what sort of noticeable differences you might find in incorporating these into your hormonal cycles?
So our capsules contain the really finely grinded seeds. So the pumpkin seeds and flax seeds in the Zest capsules, which are capsules for the first 14 days, and then sunflower and sesame seeds in the second set of capsules. And we added a little bit of psyllium for digestion and gut health, and a little bit of chasteberry or a vitex, which is an herb that is quite commonly used in Europe for period problems, PMS, sometimes also used for fertility. And it actually has been used since Greek ancient times to help with women health concerns. And so we added a very small amount there as well to really help with the PMS or more PMS part of the cycle. And essentially one takes 2 capsules, ideally in the morning, of the Zest or Zen. Zen is the name of the second half capsule, and switches it after 14 days, or ideally knowing when the ovulation is. If the ovulation is a little bit earlier, then switching then. If it takes a little bit longer, we always recommend just giving it a few days and waiting with the capsules, then starting with the new set of capsules, and then starting with the first day of period again. And it is very interesting to see and hear essentially how much the cycle gets regulated with that. And not everybody has a 28-day cycle. That is also not needed. There's a healthy cycle length that is a little bit before and a little bit after. So it doesn't need to be 28 days. It can certainly be a little bit shorter, a little bit longer. But it's really nice to hear that people who hadn't had cycles in months have cycles or have a little bit more regulated cycles again. And so this is the approach to use this capsule and integrate it ideally into the morning routine.
One thing I'm fascinated about is, your whole journey, right? So we talked a little bit about how you're helping mothers like myself navigate perimenopause, and I'm going through a totally different stage than my 15-year-old daughter who's going through puberty. And, we've talked a lot on this podcast about the sass in the house and trying to deal with that. And it just sounds like there's this magic pill that you guys have created that can help little girls going through this stage and kind of ramping up to us queenagers who are, in these final stages of our menstruation cycle. There's obviously a lot of benefits to this. I'm assuming, and maybe we can go into some of those benefits, like does cramping go away? Does acne go away? I would love to hear more about how these magic pills are helping everybody. And can we give them to our men to be shut the fuck up? Sorry.
You bring up a good point. And yeah, thank you for mentioning this. So this is essentially something very interesting. And you mentioned the spectrum essentially of women's healthy fertile life cycle. And so what we essentially recommend is the capsules for adults. However, we have heard now the first comments in teenagers and younger women or girls. And it is very interesting. So first of all, teenage girls often do not have a regular cycle yet because they're often not ovulatory yet. So the entire pituitary ovary axis essentially has to align and get into the right rhythm with all the other hormones that all communicate and interact. And those have to first go and get into their regular habits of essentially having these ebbs and flows of estrogen, progesterone, all the other hormones that play a role. And as they are not ovulatory, or as they're sometimes really long delays in between, there can be sometimes, lack of periods, very severe periods, also cramps, also associated acne. And the idea with the seed cycling is that they become more regulated, and the chasteberry actually can help as well. I spoke to some labs in Europe who use chasteberry, particularly in teenage girls. It's really nice how it helps and how it is used there. And there are other ideas such as the zinc can be anti-inflammatory and can also help with some pain. The magnesium particularly helps with pain. And also zinc magnesium can help with acne, as it modifies and modulates estrogen and progesterone, it also helps modulating testosterone, which often can contribute to acne. And also as hormones are washed out in a more easier fashion, it also helps essentially with inflammation. Now going more to the perimenopause side, in between it helps with PMS and just regular cycle, and having a really nice regular cycle is a very powerful thing to really know, when are more vulnerable days, when are really further days to act on it, to avoid it, or just being aware of the own body is actually a really important thing for women, and actually a really beautiful thing. And then for the perimenopause part, it is very interesting to see because there are certain fluctuations. Progesterone can start to dip down a little bit starting at age 35, and then there can be these estrogen fluctuations and sometimes what we call an estrogen dominance. And there can be also somewhat anovulatory cycles, prolonged cycles, more hormones of certain sorts, such as more estrogen. And the seed cycling itself can also help, and the chasteberry again can help with all this. And it probably does not help if someone has like one cycle every 6 months, but if they're a little bit uneven, it can actually really help nicely with this. And it has been well described that it again can help with balancing the hormones and washing out excess hormones and helping with all the pain, maybe perimenopause, acne, skin changes, insomnia, etc.
This is so fascinating because this is essentially something that's been in existence for, hundreds of years. And it's a very natural solution, one that I can't imagine causes a tremendous amount of side effects or things of that nature, with such proven methodology and efficiencies for women who are at any point in their cycle. As a woman myself who's gone through many of these sorts of things, I'm very frustrated that this isn't more commonplace. This isn't being spoken about in your traditional medical practices. Why is that? Because I think as a society, physicians and in the current medical system that we operate in, it's so quick to be prescribed something, prescribe. Not to say that, there aren't certain cases or scenarios in which you need to have prescriptions, but, for many of us, me personally, I would much rather lean into that natural supplementation. So I can only imagine the challenges that you're facing in this regard, but why isn't this being talked about more so? And why isn't this being advocated for with our traditional healthcare system?
So it is an interesting idea how we regard medicine these days. And I think it has developed in a lot of ways over the last centuries, or maybe the last 1,000 years. First of all, I think women's health had been a women's topic a long time ago, and it was probably traded and educated and given from one woman to the next generation within the female part. And I think there was probably a lot of herbal knowledge that was there, and it was given from, I don't know, grandmother to daughter to granddaughter, or maybe within certain schools and traditions. And that has been somewhat regarded as not great to be shared by women, and probably also somewhat esoteric and maybe even witchery, if I may say that. And that has probably been eradicated to a certain degree. And probably there was a lot of women's knowledge. It's interesting. There's this composer and very knowledgeable woman, Hildegard von Bingen, who was actually a really famous herbalist and shared a lot and had a lot of knowledge. And I think a lot of women had that at that time point. And then, of course, the development of modern medicine, how we actually have a lot of great symptom treatment. Of course, a lot of like origin treatment as well to treat the root cause of things. But on the other hand, we rely a lot on often band-aids, and sometimes we don't know root causes for everything. And I think the third aspect that is also very important is, of course, studies. And we thankfully have evidence-based medicine, and we do have studies and more knowledge on classical pharmacological medications rather than on nutrition or herbal things. And I think there's a lot of shift and a lot of change. And it's very nice and interesting to see that there's more interest going into this. And I personally am a big believer in the synergistic energy of both. And we certainly need medications. We need the traditional pharmacological approaches. But how nice is it actually to also have some herbal or natural things that can aid and help and support and maybe ease some things. And maybe we can use one in one case and the other in the other case. And not everybody's the same person. So we always have to weigh this out.
Yeah, I love that too, is taking an approach of, yes, medicine can do one thing, but there's also, our planet is filled with so many amazing things that should be used. And one thing that I'm applauding that you women are doing is really taking 2 moons into campuses, right? So to Dawn's point, there's so many of us who aren't talking about this. Finding your company, it's the first time I've ever heard of seed cycling. People are probably like, where have you been, Courtney? But really it's like, wait, what is that? And that sounds interesting. So teaching, women about hormonal health and some of the tools that are available to them is genius, because to Dawn's point, we're not talking about it. We need to get these conversations going. I, for one, feel like the term menopause, we should get rid of the men and call it whoa pause, but I'm working on that. But how important is this type of advocacy out there? And what are you guys seeing out there when you're teaching women and talking about this? Are there light bulbs going off and you're just getting so much, you're getting jazzed because of this? I'm sure like this company, you guys are like, this is awesome. Like people are like buying it. They're feeling better. Woo! So tell me a little bit about that experience for you ladies.
We absolutely love going to the business school campuses. So this last year we started at Columbia, then at NYU Stern, Wharton, and then MIT Sloan. And during these events, we paired a wellness event with a hormonal health talk. And then also not just on the medical side, but also on the role of pushing for more research in hormonal health in general, and what are some root cause reasons why maybe there's some stigmatization around speaking about menstrual health. So kind of breaking that down to the root causes. But we really believe that these women are the future captains of industry. And they're going into so many different fields. They're in business school for just 18 months, and they were pre-selected by these business schools for their leadership ability. And oftentimes they're being sponsored by employers to go to business school, and then they return to those employers, these top-notch employers. And I think that if we're able to open up their mindsets about things around menstrual health, around hormonal health, that they can take this back into many different industries and influence their workplace cultures, and to sort of normalize these public discussions around hormonal health. And we find a lot of curiosity among their generation as well. So Gen Z has really picked up on the seed cycling trend. There's so many videos on TikTok about seed cycling. So Uli and I joke around that we were accidentally on trend. We're not even on TikTok. It's sort of just like if you wear the same clothes for 40 years, eventually you're going to be really hip, right? So we're accidentally on trend, but this generation, Gen Z, they're very concerned about wellness. They really want to have more of a balanced lifestyle, balancing workplace ambition with taking care of their health. So I think that, in addition to whatever TikTok fad there is out there, it's actually an opportunity to have a bigger conversation, and also to raise certain questions. So I like to ask them, well, why is it that you think that when you go to Duane Reade, for instance, you'll see a whole aisle of cold and flu remedies? And where's the aisle for improving PMS symptoms? They say, how many times a year do you get a cold? I get a cold maybe 2 or 3 times a year. How many times a year do I have a bit difficult cycle? 12 times a year. But where's the aisle for those remedies? And to really draw into question, well, why is it considered impolite to talk about your period? Who decided what was polite? Maybe we should redefine what is polite. So these are sort of some larger questions that we want to bring into the business schools. It's sort of a tech analogy, but I think there's hardware and software. There's a hardware in terms of how do you take care of your body by the food that you feed it, the supplements you take, the rest you get. And then there's the software, which is the mindset. How do you feel about being a person with a period? Are you embarrassed about it? Are you embarrassed to talk about it? Why? And why are you embarrassed about it? And can we all be a little less embarrassed? Because I think the enemy of innovation and creativity is, in fact, embarrassment. So just, these are sort of bigger picture conversations that we want to bring to the schools.
I love it. I'm thinking about just, my daughter's going to summer camp next week, and I'm trying to get her packed up before my travels and go downstairs. I'm like, Emmy, did you pack enough tampons? Because I just want to have these free conversations in my house and like normalize it, that it's okay to have your period and it's okay to talk to it. And I could just see she got a little tensed up because I mentioned it in front of her dad. And I'm like, Dad knows you have a period. I have a period, So just taking it back to some of these kids and like how they still are growing up with this like stigmatism around, women's bodies. It's hard, you're kind of like, no, this is normal. Let's talk about it. Like what we're doing is normal. So thank you for educating.
It's so powerful, that you're opening up dialogue and really changing narrative around some of these topics that have been, had so much shame around them. And we talk about, where's the aisle for that? Well, what you're doing to educate women and to make more noise in a workplace or perhaps an educational environment is so powerful, because you think about the number of women that contribute to our global workforce and how disruptive some of these conditions can be to that, struggling with perimenopause, with your brain fog, with your executive functioning, with all of that. So we need to start having more of these conversations and really shifting the narrative around this. And so we're so very thankful for innovators and visionaries like the two of you who are making that happen. And speaking of, I was looking at your website earlier, which is so beautiful, but you have two really, really things that were very powerful to me. One was our mission goes beyond just a product. It's about cultural change, community, and giving women tools to feel more connected to their bodies. Talk about an extraordinary mission statement. That is just phenomenal. The second one that says our greatest pain point became our greatest innovation, our greatest pain point became our greatest inspiration for invention, empowering women to reclaim control over their bodies through natural, accessible solutions. So huge kudos to both of those things. Can you talk to either of those statements in any additional depth? Because I think that they resonate to so many women like myself.
I often say to Uli, it's not just a capsule, it's a conversation. For us, it was never just about a product. Well, first of all, it was about solving a very personal pain point and then realizing when it could be better for one person, it could be better for many people, right? It's a universal pain point for women who menstruate. And so I think that we just felt very compelled by the purpose. We both have careers, or, when I started this, I was working full time as a lawyer, but we felt so drawn by this mission to really serve a broader purpose. That's why I've chosen to devote, myself full time to this as well. But Uli, would you like to chime in on our mission statement?
Thank you for sharing that part. I think the other aspect is to see and learn along the way how it is perceived, and that is actually really nice and encouraging. And we discussed for some time what we actually mean and want to do in terms of change and addressing certain aspects. And it is really nice how to hear from many women and countless women over and over again, like, that is actually really something that we should do so much more. And that is a really nice thing to live through and experience in this entire growing process.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And I love the company name. Where did it come from? How did you guys come up with two moons? Your two bums? No, I'm kidding. Two butts are better than one.
You're not the first person who's mentioned that so, or joked around about that. But no, two moons, it actually has sort of a poetic meaning behind it. So my parents are originally from Taiwan, and I speak Mandarin as well. And the Chinese character for friendship is actually made of two radicals that are two moons put together. And so two moons represents our friendship, but also the friendship that a woman has with her own body and the friendship that she has with the world. So that's where it comes from.
That is beautiful. So before, all of our listeners, we're probably going to wrap up soon, but all of our listeners kind of want to know when and how to take this, right? So women typically wait until the worst time, right? We're already in crisis mode. We feel crappy. We're like, okay, we're run down. So it sounds like this product is just even more of a preventative thing, right? So if you're going through your whole stages, if you want to have your periods more regulated, I don't even know, it sounds like you could maybe even help with fertility issues, but I'm sure it's hard to claim that. But, it sounds like before things spiral out of control for us, like it's important to look at cycling, right? To really help standardize your health. Can you share any other tips and hints around that?
There's this lovely new term that I keep reading, that it's a vital sign, that the female period is a vital sign. And if that one works well, and if one lives with it well and feels well throughout it, that it's actually a really good indicator. And you actually brought up a really nice point and said doing this is a preventative. And it's true. It is an easy step to probably integrate every day to support and encourage the body to remain the natural ebbs and flows as much as possible and as long as possible. At one time point, the hormones reduce, is probably no possibility to balance it with seeds, but it is something that can be integrated and done very easily. I'm a big fan always of less is more, and everybody always needs to hear about my tips. But other things that I always share is listen really well to your body and really do simple things such as do the breathing and to drink a lot of water. Really watch out for your sleep. Everybody always needs to listen to my magnesium talks here. And other things are really good, such as, maybe some cold exposure, sunlight exposure. And because these are things that we just have forgotten. And these are little natural tweaks that we all can integrate very easily in helping our very intricate system that is actually really dependent on light and nighttime and melatonin and adenosine to really balance out all our hormones and help us feel well. And it's just really little tweaks that can be done all day long without thinking much about it. They can help. And these little seeds are a nice tool.
And you make it so easy to incorporate all of those into our daily routines and regimens. How can we find more about your company? How can we order your products? How can we learn about, these different types of seeds? How can we find more of you, ladies, and the beautiful product that you've created?
You can find us on our website, www.twomoonshealth.co, twomoonshealth.co, and also on Instagram at twomoonshealth. On our website, you can order a pair of the bottles for both one time or subscription. And there's also a lot of the studies that we drew on that are linked there if you want to read more about each of the ingredients, all the seeds and the chasteberry, and also a lot of frequently asked questions about the use.
That sounds amazing. Hopefully we'll get them on our menopause marketplace too. So we'll talk to you about that and support your company and share with all of our lovely followers and growing community, because that's what we're about, is sharing amazing products and stories like you two. So thank you, ladies, so much for being on today, sharing your stories, sharing your passion for health, helping change the world for better, one seed at a time. That's we'll call it a wrap. That's it for today. So please follow them. Be sure to follow us on our social media at Hot Flash Health. Listen to any of your favorite podcast platforms, and let's build this community together, ladies. So until next time, stay classy, sassy, and keep those hot flashes in check. And that's a wrap on today's episode. Remember, menopause may be a wild ride, but together we've got this.
And don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok at Hot Flash Health.
Stream and subscribe to us on any of your favorite listening platforms like YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
And of course, share your thoughts with us. We love hearing from our amazing listeners.
And until next time, stay sassy, stay fabulous, and keep those hot flashes in check.
Yeah, girl.
Woo!